Hey everyone, what's up and welcome back to the next Koze video. Today I'm not filming in the usual Koze cave. My heat is broken, but I still created a cozy space for us to vibe and hang out with today. We got a candle going. We have Calvin the cat over here off to my other side. And I wanted to talk to you guys today about books. Specifically, well, one, how to make a reading list. You might already have a reading list, but you can definitely cater your reading list based on some of the tips I'm going to share today. This is how I like to create my reading lists both seasonally and for the year, and then also two, what books I'm going to be reading in 2022. I left a couple open spots because I do like to find books throughout the year too. I love going to the bookstore, so all within tips that I'll probably give you today. And I also want to know what you're reading, so let me know down below what's on your reading list for 2022. Here are some books that I would recommend reading in 2022 and how to create a reading list to begin with. Okay, so first things first, why would you ever want to make a reading list? Well, one, I would hope that it would be because you like to read. If you don't like to read, then all of this might not be your vibe. Two, if you make a reading list, then one, you'll never lose track of those books that you spot, find, or hear about that you're like, oh my gosh, I really want to read that, but you might not have the time in that moment, so you just add it to your reading list and then you'll never forget about it. And one day, one year, you'll get around to reading it, hopefully. Two, having a reading list helps you narrow down not only what you want to read and when, but you can also pair books together if you do like to read multiple books at a time, or you can line them up in such a way that they fit with the seasons, that they fit with the vibe. It's just like it helps you get, just lists. Lists, period. Lists are great. I love lists. So when it comes to making a reading list, the first thing I like to think about is how many books that I want to read for the duration of time. So I tend to make reading lists for the year, so on a year-by-year basis, and then also season by season. And then I like to break it down by how many books it would be per month. I like to aim to read 2 books a month, usually a fiction and a non-fiction. That's the system that works for me, but you can definitely create your own system. I know people that read like 5 books a month, and then some people that read 1 book a season. So just figure out how many books do you want to read in a year, break it down month by month, or break it down by season. And that's the first thing you want to do, because then you know exactly how many slots you have to fill for the year and what books will have to wait for other years. Tip number 2, pick genres that interest you. So this part can be fun if you are an avid reader and you know that there's certain genres that you really gravitate towards, then it's always fun to throw in a new genre every now and then and try out something new. And then 3, I like to always pick at least one classic author for the year. Be it Jane Austen, be it Tolstoy, be it, Marcus Aurelius. There's so many classic authors out there, Shakespeare. You can really have fun with it. I just feel like it's cool to read some classics, look at the authors, see what kind of authors you want to put on your list, because maybe you don't want to read some classic authors and maybe you want to read other authors that you already know about that you really enjoyed their book. For instance, if anybody's read a Taylor Jenkins Reid book and really liked it, one would be like Daisy Jones and the Six, then you might find that you like more of her other books. So take a look at some authors that you've already really enjoyed, and then also take a look at some classic authors, and don't be afraid to give the classics a try because they're classics for a reason. Use influential people to fill your reading list. So by this I mean, if you don't want to go by authors, or if you want to add more books that aren't just from cool or classic authors, look at people that really inspire you and see what they're reading. If there's an artist that you really love, if there is a inspirational, motivational speaker that you really love, if there is someone that you just really look up to, check out their reading lists and add some of those books to your list. So my 4th tip with making a reading list would be to make at least 1 book, even if it's just for the year, educational and informative. Especially if you're no longer in school anymore, it helps you not only sharpen your brain and learn new skills, but it's fun, it helps you grow, it helps you adapt to new things that you didn't know before. It expands our horizons when we never stop learning. Like, life is just a constant classroom. When you add an educational or informative book, you're not only expanding your own intellectual repertoire, but you're also expanding your horizons in terms of things that you'll be able to do or know. So for instance, if you know nothing about, let's say, human history, then throw in a human history book. If you know nothing about how to do your taxes. As boring as it might sound, throw in a book about how to learn to do taxes. Like, it sounds boring, but you can make it fun, and it's all on your own terms. So that's the best part. And then my final tip, number 5, is to leave some spaces open. I learned this the hard way because in past years, I have made my reading list. I figured out every book I wanted to read for every single month, and then as the year went on and I'd go to a bookstore or I'd get a recommendation from a friend, I'd want to read something different than I had planned. So leaving a couple spaces open allows you to slide some books in throughout the year that you may not have seen coming when you made your list. I keep all of the books that I want to read on my laptop or on my phone in the notes app, and I just keep it all organized there, and I have the books that I want to read for the year, and then underneath are just all of the books that I ever make a list of. So every time I hear of a book or I find a book or I get recommended a book, I just add it to the big list at the bottom, and then I organize them into the top list of the year. Another thing you can do to organize your reading list is to join something like Goodreads, which is an online platform that helps you organize not only the books you've read, but the books you want to read, and you can find really cool recommendations on there as well. So without further ado, I'm going to share with you guys some of the books that I plan on reading this year. So I want to read 22 books in 2022. I did that specifically, which will make it so that if I read 24, then I hit above my goal, which is nice. And the genres that I have been really enjoying lately and decided to add to my list are self-development, spiritual, lifestyle romance fiction, classics, philosophy, and historical fiction. Some of the classic authors I'll be reading this year are Marcus Aurelius, George Orwell, Charlotte Bronte, and J.D. Salinger, as well as Epictetus. I never know how to say his name. Epictetus. For philosophy, I'll be reading Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. This has been on my list for so long. I purchased this back in, I think it was 2019. And I've been wanting to read this forever, but I just always found other books in that I wanted to read first. So this is the first one. And then the other Stoic, I guess you might say, or philosophy book I'll be reading is The Art of Living, the classic manual on virtue, happiness, and effectiveness. And this is by, as I just previously mentioned, I don't exactly know how to pronounce it, but it's Epictetus. It's the only way that I could think of to say that. In terms of self-development, I have The Comfort Book by Haig. And I actually read The Midnight Library with the Koze Book Club, which is a member bonus if you decide to become a Koze member. We read The Midnight Library and it was amazing, and so many of the members ended up picking up this book afterwards and highly recommended it, so I picked it up for 2022. This comfort book is basically all about like finding comfort in these weird times. And then the other self-development book I chose to read this year is The Psychology of Money. This is by Morgan Housel, or Huesel. And I picked up this book because one, somebody that I really love watching on YouTube actually recommended it, and they are somebody that's very spiritual. So I'm not really somebody that like loves finances. It just doesn't intrigue me. My brain doesn't really work that way. But apparently this is more so the psychology behind money, and it's more so about like how the way that you live your life can also feed into your finances. So doing well with money isn't necessarily about what you know, it's about how you behave. And behavior is hard to teach, even to really smart people. Money, investing, personal finance, and business decisions, it's typically taught as a math-based field where data and formulas tell us exactly what to do. But in the real world, people do not make decisions that are financial on a spreadsheet. They make them at the dinner table or in a meeting room where personal history, your unique view of the world, ego, pride, marketing, and odd incentives are scrambled together. So the psychology of money is meant to go through all of those things. It's not so math-based, but a little bit more behavioral-based, which I find really interesting. Where is The Seven Husbands? An Outlander. All right, so for romance lifestyle fiction, I have picked up The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I have also read the Daisy Jones and the Six and Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and I love her style of writing. I've heard amazing things about this book, so I'm super excited to read it. And the other one that I picked up is Outlander. Now, I am a huge Outlander fan. I became obsessed with Outlander in 2020 when the pandemic first hit, and I just didn't leave my house. That's what I was doing until 4 o'clock in the morning, was watching Outlander episodes on repeat. It's by Deanna Gabaldon. And apparently this series is a huge commitment, so I figure I'll start reading them now and finish when I'm an old lady. So yeah. So in terms of more educational, I have Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind. This is by Yuval Noah Harari. And again, I've seen and heard amazing things about this book. I've had it for a few years. It's been sitting on my book shelf, and so I decided this will be the year that I want to read it. I want to figure out exactly that history. I find history to be very interesting when I choose it to be, not when it's forced upon me in the school systems. And I also picked up Archetypes. This is by Myss. I also read her other book, The Anatomy of the Spirit, an amazing, amazing book, and so I picked up Archetypes. Perhaps this one might be actually a bit more spiritual, if it's anything like Anatomy of the Spirit, but I'm putting it into educational because it is about learning about like the different archetypes that we all live in. Excited to read this one. Also, I'll leave my Goodreads down below as well because I tend to review all of the books that I read when I'm finished them. So definitely go check that out if you want to know how all of these end up at the end of the year. So some other spiritual books I'll be reading are Women Who Run with the Wolves. I just started it. I don't have it here with me. I forgot it because it was by my egg chair. So that'll be the first one I'm reading. The other one is The Mastery of Self. This is by Don Miguel Ruiz Jr. It's the son of the author from The Four Agreements, which I've thoroughly enjoyed. I've also read the first 3 chapters of this one already, and it is amazing. So I'll be reading, I guess this could also fit into philosophy as well, or like life philosophy, but I decided to put it into the spirituality sector. And then another book I'll be reading is Metahuman, Unleashing Your Infinite Potential by Deepak Chopra. And this book is basically all about how we can use our minds to expand our consciousness, to expand our awareness, to basically, you know, become metahuman, be able to do a lot more using the alignment of our thoughts and the vibrational waves that come with our thoughts. I have a couple options for historical fiction, one of which that I forgot today. It's Circe, which I picked up last year. I'll probably read that one closer to the fall, literally because it's orange colored. Yes, I am that person. The other one I have is The Paris Wife. This was written by Paula McLean. I picked this one up closer to Christmas, and it is about Ernest Hemingway and his wife. And next I have Wild Woman in the Blues. This is by Denny S. Bryce. This one's really cool as well. It's basically about a woman from 1925 in jazzy Chicago, and then it skips forward to 2015 where she's telling her story to a film student who wants to know everything that happened in that jazz era of the 20s in Chicago, as well as Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. So this book was actually on Taylor Swift's reading list, hence why I've put it on my own, and I finally picked up a copy of it. It's been on my reading list for a while. So in terms of summer reads, I have 2 that I picked up last summer that I didn't get to. The first is The Summer Job by Lizzie Dent. This is about a girl who basically takes her best friend's spot going to become a wine connoisseur in Scotland and meets a hot Scottie while she's there. Love that for her. And then Jennifer Weiner, and it is called Big Summer. And this book is also just like, it's a light summer read. In the summer I like to read fictions that are a little bit lighter, so I'll probably read those June, July-ish, I'm thinking. And then I have, to top it off, a couple classics to read this year. So the first is Margaret Atwood. This is The Handmaid's Tale. Again, I've been wanting to read this for a really long time. It's been sitting on my bookshelf for a really long time, so I finally picked it up. Next is Anne of Avonlea, and this is by L.M. Montgomery. I read the first Anne of Green Gables in September of 2021, and I loved it, and so I really wanted to read another one for 2022. It was like a warm, safe space to go in terms of books. Next, I've had this on my bookshelf forever, and I'm deciding to read it this year. It's actually 2 books in one by the classic author George Orwell. It's Animal Farm and 1984. This is like a special edition that I found at Indigo a couple years back. And I read both of these books back in, one was in elementary school, like grade 8, and then one was in high school. And I really want to read them again because I kind of forget everything that happens. And then last but not least, I have Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. And this is one of those old classics as well, and this is also a special edition, so it comes with its own little bookmark. The book itself is just beautiful, and it's kind of like art. It has like little biographies and such in it as well, which I just think is so cool. I've really enjoyed reading old books from like back in the day, or written like 100 years ago, and just seeing and feeling the difference of even the writing styles from then to now. So I decided to add this one to my list, which has been on my reading list for a little while. So those are all of the books that I'll be reading for 2022. I've left a couple slots open, although not very many, if I'm honest with you. And the last tip that I feel like I have is to just be flexible. So if I end up finding other books throughout the year that I want to swap out, I'll swap them out. But I am really excited because I do feel like I have a very wide range here, and I'm just pumped to get started. Right now I am actually reading Women Who Run with the Wolves. I'll probably be reading The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo next, so a very strong feminine power going into February, which is really cool. And let me know what you guys are reading down below. And you can also find the full reading list in the description box. Other than that, I'm sending you all of the warm, cozy book vibes from this little corner to yours, and I'll talk to all of you guys very soon. Bye guys.